Hi, and welcome to today's show, where I will be sharing some astrological insights. I'm diving back into my first love of astrology to share with you some development insights that can help you grow, strengthen your mindset, and shift your psyche. So, therefore, that you can move from this state of feeling possibly complacent or unfulfilled, or, just that general sense of you're not quite sure how and where to move your life towards. And astrology is a fantastic personal transformational tool that I first came across in the late 90s when I trained to be an astrologer. And so there's a significant astrological event happening on July the 18th. And I wanted to bring it to your attention to give you a head start in terms of how you can begin to rethink how you could develop in the next 18 months. Before I dive into any and all of that, welcome back if you're one of my regulars. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Bybreen and I help baby boomers reinvent themselves psychologically, practically, and technically so they can thrive in their third act of life. So here we are, this astrological event, which is basically known as the North and the South nodes. Now, the nodes basically mean when the path of the sun and the moon cross. Now, this happens a couple of times a year with regards to the eclipses. But what's actually happening is this sense of the nodes are in each and every one of our birth charts. And it takes about 18 years to travel around the whole chart. So let's say your birth chart has the node in Aries. Well, it's now coming back to that point again on July the 18th. And so it opens up a new cycle of development. And the nodes literally are pairs, they're a polarity. So just think you have Aries and its opposite is Libra. And so on July the 18th, the nodes will shift from the Earth sign of Taurus, where the North Node currently is, and the South Node is in Scorpio. They will shift into a fire and air polarity, fire being Aries and air being Libra. So, what does this all mean from a personal development point of view? How could you use the power, the energy of the nodes to advance your life? Well, the nodes, particularly the North Node, is seen as a destiny point. So for the next 18 months, kicking off from July the 18th through to the 11th of January 2025, it's a growth opportunity. It's an indication, it's the destiny for the next 18 months in terms of how you can open up, expand your life. And in particular, when we're looking at Aries, it's about how do you cultivate a new identity. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, and the astrological year starts in Aries. And so it coincides with the season of spring. So it's an opportunity to plant new seeds. How do you birth yourself into a new identity? So when we're looking at Aries, Aries has two rulers. It has a mundane ruler of Mars. So Mars is this ruler whereby it's about ambition and action and assertion. But it has an esoteric ruler, which is Mercury, and that's about being the strategist. So in terms of some of the qualities and the characteristics of Aries, if we think of the glyph of Aries, it's the ram's kind of horns. And so there's this sense of being pushy, battering, pushing through life, being assertive, being confident, being the star of the show. That's essentially what's being called for. How do you become the star of your own show? Now, that's the positive elements because that can lead into individuation. However, if we think about the negative side, there can be this sense of domineering, impatience, being petulant, literally riding roughshod over other people's feelings. And that's when we look at the opposite side. And the opposite side for Aries is Libra. And so as the nodes move in July, the South Node will be in Libra, and Libra is ruled by Venus. And Venus is all about love and balance and harmony and justice and inclusion and softness and gentleness. And so, therefore, they appear to be polar opposites. But for us moving into this new cycle, what can we learn? What can we take from our experience, our previous experience of understanding the Libran energy? So let me share some things whereby we need to be developing when this cycle takes place and things we need to be letting go of. So with regards to Aries, attributes, characteristics to develop will be about confidence, assertion, having a healthy level of selfishness, meaning knowing where to draw the line, where you can be boundaried, you can still help people, but it's calling for a level of being boundaried. And the reason being, it's the opportunity for you now to pour into your life in a way that's truly fulfilling. If we think about the astrological chart, it starts with the first house, and that correlates with Aries. And the first house is about I, me, myself, and I. And I'm going to step you through all of the 12 houses. But essentially, what it's calling for is the identity. How do you begin to shift your identity in a way that's going to fulfill your underlying desires that enables you to live with far more flexibility, with far more assertion, with far more happiness? Because the Achilles heel with regards to the North Node in Aries and Aries per se is there is this desire for a relationship. We all want to be relating to other people, but we need to learn how can we be a partner to ourselves first. Because if we think about the Venusian and the Libran energies, we've been in quotes the supporting role. And so the North Node in Aries is saying it's time to step away from behind the throne. You know, you're no longer the king and queen behind the throne. It's now the time for you to be stepping into your own true identity. So there's some of the things that you need to develop once, you know, the nodes move into Aries. What do you need to let go of? Or certainly loosen. You need to loosen this idea of codependency, because Aries on the one hand is about independence and Libra is about interdependence. And it's about how do you relinquish codependency, but at the same time balance what your needs are with the needs of other people. It's also about developing a level of letting go of being selfless, you know, selfless to the point whereby you've so supported other people. So you've created leverage for them. You've been their cheerleader. You're the one who's always encouraging them, building them up from the ground up, create leverage for them. So therefore they can spring forth into the world. And you might have always done that, but there may have been an element of resentment there because what you've done is you've negated that responsibility to yourself. So the idea of this polarity between Aries and Libra is about balance and harmony. And, you know, there is a quote that could really help you, or an affirmation. Before I can support other people, I need to nourish and nurture myself. And that's what the North Node, as it moves into Aries, is calling on each and every one of us to do. How do we first nourish and nurture ourselves that facilitates the creation of a new identity, and being anchored in that new identity, pick up the lessons from Libra that helps to create a healthy level of fusion whereby you're in a harmonious relationship, but there's also you and your partner, and then there's a space for you together. So let me step you through the astrological houses that run from the first house to the 12th house. And as I said, irrespective of when you were born, the nodes are already in your chart. They might not be in Aries, but they will be in one of the houses. The North Node will be in one house, and whatever house that is, the South Node will be in the opposite house. And we need to be careful of the South Node because the South Node is our comfort zone. So if we go back to our own charts, it's our comfort zone, what we're used to, through past lifetimes and even in this lifetime. And so therefore, the South Node can be the way that we remain boundaried and cushioned. It's better the devil we know as opposed to stepping beyond that and becoming this intrepid explorer that Aries is calling for. But it's not about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's more about how and what are the lessons that can be pulled from the South Node? What have we learned from our Libran journeys that can facilitate this North Node in Aries? So the first house is about I, me, the body, the physical body. And, Aries is ruled by Mars, and Mars is very much about action. And so what action can you take? Let's say when the nodes actually cross over into Aries, what actions can you take to become more physical? The first house, North Node, could be calling you to transform your life in a really physical way. How could you become more active? And it's also pointing in the direction of, well, you know what? I want to become more active. So therefore, I need to craft more time. I need to take more time for myself, because if I become more active, that's going to be a fantastic way for me to actually nourish myself, feed myself. I'm somebody who I've exercised for 55 years from the egg and spoon race. I don't have the node in Aries, but what I do have, I have Jupiter in Aries. And so I've lived my life, from a Jupiterian perspective, but also I've had multiple identities. And that's what Jupiter in Aries is pointing to. For me to be stuck into one identity throughout my whole life would have just been too painful for me. And I'm so glad I didn't live that way. But the North Node is calling you in Aries. What's the new identity that you can create? Who can you become? You decide, because Aries is about being the pioneer, being the leader in your life. Now, the balance here is, Aries can be like the bull in the china shop, and it can, be the ram that keeps butting its head against a particular obstacle. And so what you need to learn here is, when do I need to use logic? How do I bring in logic in a way that's going to facilitate this new identity that I can give birth to? So therefore, once I have nourished myself, I can then bring that into the arena of relationships. So that's the first house. The first house is about I. How do I bring this sense of ambition, fulfilling what it is that I want to do, but also being a strategist around that very first house. The second house, when the North Node, and it's in Aries and it moves into the second house, here's an indication in terms of, in the previous life, have you always been looking at other people's values? The second house is what do you stand for? So if the North Node in Aries falls into your second house, it's calling on you to really define, because the second house is associated with an earth element, is ruled by Venus Taurus. So therefore, it's about concretizing your values in a way that's meaningful. What do you stand for? So that's the question that you need to be asking, that can help to expand your life. Because once you've got clarity in terms of what you stand for, it doesn't matter what else is going on, and it doesn't matter what other people think, because you're developing this solid identity. You're really clear about what you stand for, and then having an understanding of what you stand for, how do you then go out and build something tangible? So North Node in Aries in the second house could be pointing to you to roll up your sleeves and build something meaningful for you. Turning now to the third house, we have the North Node Aries in the third house. Now, the opposite house to the third house is the ninth house, which is Jupiter's house. And here you're the sort of philosopher. So you've spent lifetimes pulling in information and ruminating about, the information that's coming from a philosophical point of view. Now, when the North Node moves into the third house, what it's calling for you to do is to give up the identity of the mental nomad and actually become the meaningful messenger. Everything that you've learned, the fragments of information that you've picked up in this lifetime, previous lifetimes, how do you now organize the information? Because the third house is associated with Mercury and Gemini. So it's about organizing the information, become the messenger from the gods, bring it down to, the mortal man and woman and share it, share the message with them in a meaningful way. How can you lead that conversation, but also be inclusive with that conversation? That's what it's calling for in the third house. So if you're feeling lacklustre and you're just feeling, oh gosh, I'm moving into my third age and I'm really bored and I'm not quite sure what to do. But I like gathering information, or I know a lot of things. This is the identity that you might want to try on over the next 18 months and embed that into your character. With the North Node in Aries, or the Arian North Node in the fourth house. So it's the house of home, it's a house of family, it's a house of ancestry. So here, it's about, instead of being this individual, how can you coexist from within the family? Where do you fit within your family structure, your family environment? Is it calling for you to redefine the relationship with your parents? As boomers, some of you still have your parents. Is it an opportunity to redefine the relationship with the parents? Is it an opportunity for you to grow in emotional maturity? Where are you still petulant? Where are you still living as the baby of the family, even though you're in your 60s? Yeah. So the North Node in Aries in the fourth house is calling for that level of emotional engagement with yourself. And so therefore you can coexist in this familial environment. Also, with a transiting North Node in the fourth house, it could really be an indication it's time for you to leave home. Time for you to move, time for you to travel, time for you to leave what's familiar to establish yourself in a wholesome way where you're building your own home. And once that's grounded in a way that's meaningful for you, that builds that emotional connection with yourself, you can then bring that back into your family environment. Aries North Node in the fifth house. So here we're looking at creativity. As a boomer, your children are grown if you've had children. You could be an empty nester. And so you've got loads of time on your hand and there's a kind of loss of identity. You're very committed to family life. You've brought up this very, loving set of children. You may be with a partner, you may not be. So on the one hand, the fifth house is about creativity and children. So if your children have left the home, who do you now become? So it's about becoming this new identity. And how can you use creativity as a way to facilitate this new identity? Think about all those wonderful hobbies that you had prior to children and they sort of fell by the wayside. And even if you didn't have children, are there hobbies or interests that you'd love to pick up and engage with? Now, the polar house to the fifth house is the 11th house, and the 11th house is the house of friendships. Or have you been somebody that has been so immersed in the world of friendships that is dissipated your creative capacity to build the things that you want to do that bring you joy? So here is an opportunity to see what has sapped your energy. What have you thrown your energy to that may have fulfilled other people? And you may have gained something from it. But at the same time, what you've done is you've disassociated with your creativity. Arian North Node, fifth house, is calling for you to dive back in there. It also could be a time when you're exploring love relationships, really having a great time because, this stage of life in terms of the years, you could be somebody late 50s, early 60s, who's exploring new relationships. Great time to do that. And here it's about understanding, who do you want to show up as in these new love affairs? Very interesting. Aries North Node in the sixth house is saying, okay, we're back to an earth house. How can you get serious about daily habits? Daily habits in your life, daily habits in your work, daily habits with regards to health. What is it that you need to now become more disciplined with? One of the things that may be contributing to you feeling unfulfilled is that, you've become undisciplined, or you've given up on yourself. You've kind of thrown the towel in and just think, this is my lot. Aries North Node in the sixth house is saying, get disciplined. That's very much Mars. That's the Martian energy. And then when we think about the Aries ruled by Mercury from an esoteric point of view, it's saying, bring some logic, get a plan of action together that's going to enable you to follow the rules that you set, that's going to bring discipline into your life. And by being more disciplined, you're now going to bring more joy in your life. And also, it's inviting you to have more faith. Have faith, have trust in your life. You can do it. That's what it's saying to you. You can do it, but you need to commit. That kind of rhymes there, doesn't it? You can do it, but you need to commit. Anyway, moving into Aries and the seventh house, North Node, Aries and the seventh house, the natural polarity, as I mentioned at the beginning. First house is Aries, natural polarity. Seventh house is Libra. And so here it is about understanding, how can you coexist harmoniously in your intimate relationships, your love relationships, but also it could be your business relationships per se that are close to you. The South Node is saying, just capitulate, make sure everybody else is happy. Now, you ultimately want to be doing that, but you want to also be happy within yourself. So here, the Aries is saying, how can you balance the need to be independent, but also recognize the deep value that you gain by being in relationship with others? And in order to do so, you must be able to flick and see two sides of the coin. Yeah. This is where you move from I, me, myself, and I to we. That will enable you to balance the energies. Aries North Node in the eighth house. Now, the eighth house is the house of what's hidden. It's also the house of the metaphoric death. What aspect of your personality and character needs to be killed off in order for you to be reborn? So if we think about Aries, very dynamic, very powerful, very hot-headed, wants its own way, but it's in a house of others. It's the eighth house, other people's resources, other people's values, other people's ideas, other people's things is one level. It's also about, the psychological depths that we can go to, because in the natural natal chart, it's ruled by Pluto. So it's Scorpio's house. So it's everything that's hidden beneath the surface. Are you now courageous to bring to the surface your true identity in a way that clearly is not going to be alarming to other people? But have you been hiding aspects of who you are? Have you been pretending? Have you been fearing other people finding out something about you? Well, Aries North Node is saying, come on, step up, have the courage to be yourself. And by being yourself, you're going to bring far more honesty into your life, but into the life of others. And the eighth house is about intimacy. And intimacy is about, how do we reveal ourselves to ourselves, but also to that other person that we're really close to, that we're intimate with, sexually intimate with, emotionally intimate with, psychologically intimate with. It's where we begin to strip away all of those fantastic layers, but they got to go. So that's what Aries North Node in the 8th house. So if you're feeling lackluster, where is your energy being dissipated because you're not being true to who you are? There's some level of lies that you have been maintaining for fear of rocking the boat, but you need to be yourself. So if it falls in your 8th house, it's the house of undoing in a healthy way, but it's the way whereby you must rock the boat in order to breathe and to be. And then that can open up more intimacy, but it also allows you to explore the nuances of who you are and other people, and then respect other people's resources, possessions, and values. Okay, turning to the 9th house. So here we have Aries in the 9th house, Jupiter's house, a house of philosophy, higher learning. And so here, Aries is calling for you, step back from the trivia of life, the gossip, the trivia, things, the surface rubbish that we can trap ourselves in. Hence why we just think, is this it? You know, as I had on the thumbnail, is this it? Is this my life? No. If you think about Aries in the 9th house, it wants you to be philosophical. You're now going to kind of explore universal truths about the meaning of life. From our developmental point of view, from our personal development, we can develop externally. So we do external things to show that we're developing. We've got the internal development, and then there's that third level. What is the philosophical development that we're calling for? So Aries in the 9th house could be about you exploring that. Aries in the 9th house could be about you making sense of the world and sharing that, teaching, leading in a way that other people feel empowered. That's going to be a great thing. But it really is about stripping away the trivia. We've lived as boomers at least 6 decades. We're stepping into our 6th decade and beyond. And so therefore we've got, oceans of value underneath us, within us. But also we've got perspective, and that's what the 9th house. So as a baby boomer who just feels as if life has become as dry as watching paint, shift your perspective, become engaged with the world again. North Node Aries in the 10th house is calling for you to step into the world. I said earlier, from a South Node Libran perspective, you're the king or the queen behind the throne, bigging everybody else up, building them up so that they create leverage and step out into the world. The 10th house is calling for you to step into the public realm. Whether you're working, not working, retired, it really doesn't matter. In terms of your identity, have you got this burning identity to be this public person? Well, Aries in the 10th house, Aries in the 10th house is saying it's time to step forward, time to step up and own your position. But what it's also calling for you to do is now to do it with emotional maturity. People, it's a public place. You're in the public realm, whether it's a paid job, unpaid job, it's your passion, whatever it is. It's the opposite to the 4th house, where I mentioned about this emotional maturity. Are you still emotionally immature? Are you still that 63-year-old who's still the baby of the family? That's not going to cut it when you step into the 10th realm, the 10th house. How do you show up with authority so that you shine, but can lead in a way where other people have confidence in you? There's that quote from Steve Jobs, and he said, one of the things he said was, put your ding in the world. And so an Arian North Node in the 10th house is about putting your ding publicly in the world. Aries North Node in the 11th house is the house of friendship. Now, the sun which is exalted in Aries. So it's at the pinnacle. It loves being in Aries. It's like the sun on vacation. Doesn't actually like being in the 11th house. Why? Because an exalted sun in the form of Aries doesn't want to share the stage with anybody. It's me, myself, and I. I don't care if there's a crowd behind me. That's it, behind me. Aries exalted wants to take center stage. However, the journey for 11th house Aries North Node is saying, but you need to share with other people. So, how can you become an ordinary, regular member of your group? Yeah, your friendship group, your networks, all of the different groupings that go on in your world. And the 11th house, Aries North Node, is inviting you to get rid of that me, myself, and I and step into we, because the 11th house is the house of benefits from other people. Now, don't alienate people because the arrogance is still there, the ego is still underdeveloped. Here it's about how do you begin to show up in a leadership way. But the most important thing here is how do you empower other people so that they equally can be leaders in their own life, and then collectively you can share, because from the natural astrological chart, the 11th house is the sign of Aquarius. And so that's about the collective. So, how do you share with the collective? That's the journey for you. And then finally, we have the Arian North Node in the 12th house. So it's a house where you come home, where we come home to ourselves. It's the house where we can take off the mask if we had the mask on in the first place. You know, it's where it's called unfolding or undoing, but it's where you get to merge. So the first house, just imagine the first house is me, myself, and I. The 12th house means that we have traveled through every area of life. And on that journey, we have learned so many different things. And it's not me, myself, and I. The 12th house is Neptune's house. So it's about sensitivity, compassion, the collective. How do we all grow in faith and spirituality? So the North Node in the 12th house is asking you to be spiritual. It could be about a spiritual awakening. How do you lead yourself from the ego? So how do you loosen, the claws and Mars saying, it is me, it is I, and I don't care about we, through to using Mercury as the esoteric ruler to how do I use logic and emotions here? Because Neptune wants you to use your emotion. Be compassionate, be loving, be giving. And Mercury's role here in the 12th house is now is not the time to be egocentric. Now is the time to understand the life lessons and how can you now release and relax and grow and then merge with the collective, because we're all one. So that's what I wanted to share with you. This journey of the Arian North Node and the Libran South Node that will sail in, float in through air and fire on July the 11th. No, July the 18th, 2023, and will remain there for 18 months until January the 11th, 2025. So have a fantastic journey. I'd love to hear in the comments where it is showing up in your life. What house, if you're into astrology and you have your chart and you have an understanding of that, where is this North Node in Aries showing up in your house? So in my house, my chart, from a whole sign point of view, it's going to be in my 5th house. And from a Placidus point of view, it's going to be in my 4th house. And which is interesting because Jupiter has just left Aries, and now the North Node is going to be going over the ground that Jupiter has just covered. And wherever Jupiter is, Jupiter's beneficial. Jupiter is about abundance. Jupiter brings you things, but it also is about your own wisdom and how you integrate it and, multiple identities, certainly from my point of view. And as baby boomers, there are two transits that baby boomers are coming through. So I'm like the last of the baby boomers because I was born in 1963, and then the last one is 1964. And so for my era, 1963, we have completed our Saturn return because we were born with Saturn in Aquarius, and Saturn has now just moved into Pisces. And then for 63, those born in 1963, Jupiter was in Aries. And so when we have these returns, they're real pivotal points for us as older people, because the Saturn return is the second Saturn return. The first Saturn return was life gave us everything. When we went from 0 to 30, life fed us in a particular way. Then 30 to 60 is how we have contributed, how we built our skills, etc. And then the invitation for Saturn into its third act, it is about understanding those lessons. And with Saturn in Aquarius is a good position because Saturn is about the mountain goat. Just think Saturn in Capricorn, the mountain goat that struggles to get to the top of the mountain. And once there, it's like, look what I have achieved. It's very eye-centric. Saturn in Aquarius, it's like, well, I've achieved for myself. What about the collective? So it's a far more social dynamic to Saturn in Aquarius. So, somebody like myself who was born with Saturn in Aquarius is orientated more that way. And so that's the second Saturn return. Jupiter return is, Jupiter is every 12 years. I've just had my Jupiter return. And just as that finished, a wonderful travel opportunity came into my life. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be brilliant. But it is about, being generous. It is about being philosophical. It's about wisdom. It's about being in the world and learning from the world. How do we learn from the world? Now, as we're moving nodes from Taurus to Aries, Jupiter has just moved from Aries to Taurus. So here, Jupiter now wants you to ground the ideas that, were very much in the fire sign of Aries, and ground them, turn them into reality. So us as baby boomers, particularly the later, us, born 64, 63, 62, 61, etc. It's a wonderful opportunity for us now to look back over the 6 decades. What have you learnt? What won't you be doing again? What not to fear? There is a sense of, that's never going to happen to me again. Well, every experience we have won't happen to us again because we're different people that are stepping in at different points of our lives. And so therefore, with this shift in the nodes from, Taurus to Aries, it's a wonderful opportunity for you now to take ownership of this new identity. So please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Leave some comments in the comment box below. I'd love to hear where you are on your journey. And I will see you again on the next show, which is next week, Sunday. And I have just seen there's a couple of, yes, Karen, thank you very much. Great to see you here. And who's Dominic McKay? Lovely to see you as well. Thank you very much for your comments. Look forward to seeing you again. And please share this episode with other fantastic baby boomers in your life, because as you know, I'm here to help them thrive in their third act of life, psychologically, practically, and technically. Have a great day. Enjoy the sunshine if you're here in the UK. It's very sunny, or wherever you are in the world. Take care, and I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.